Hello, let me say right up front, this video contains spoilers for The Witness. You're probably not going to get a lot out of this video if you haven't played it, so play The Witness, or if you have played The Witness, and then come back and watch this video. So this is a video I wanted to make talking about The Witness, its gameplay, and the ending to The Witness, and some of the reactions to the ending, and some thoughts on that. So let's get into it and start with looking at the gameplay. So the gameplay of The Witness is mostly solving puzzles. In fact, you'll spend 40-50 hours just solving these puzzles. The puzzles themselves really teach a language. You learn the language of the puzzles, the symbols, and the meaning over time, and as you start to understand this language, you begin to unlock lasers, and these lasers then allow you to unlock a puzzle on top of the mountain. Once you've unlocked the mountain, you can reach an elevator which kind of takes you to an ending, the first ending some call it. And there's also an optional challenge area, which is really one of the best parts of the game, is running through the timed challenge with the music and just sort of testing how well do you know the language of the island. So while most of the game is focused on the puzzles, there are some narrative elements in the game. These are in the form of audio logs that you will find. You will also find some video clips that you can watch. There are also some statues placed around the area in interesting poses that sort of imply a story behind each of the statues. There is, of course, the ending dialogue that you get, which Buddhist reading and Buddhist text there as you fly in a Willy Wonka elevator across the map. And then there's a secret ending that sort of hints that there may be something more going on, or it's all a dream, or something like that. So in this video, I'm not interested in talking about the meaning of The Witness and what these narrative elements could add up to and mean. I'm more interested in talking about the conversation of narrative around The Witness, because as I've said, The Witness has very little narrative in it. It's mostly gameplay, and yet the discussion has clearly been dominated by the narrative in The Witness that has surrounded the game. I'll link to it below, but there's a thread on Steam that you can read about how the narrative of The Witness is about several people who have made journeys to the island, and that their stories are recounted in the audio logs, and how the audio logs can be grouped and unravel each of their individual stories. I'll also link to here an essay on New Inquiry of sort of a more formal art criticism view of the narrative in The Witness. And let me just quote from the review that the Witness tried to be about technology's use as a tool of burgos escapism and failed. Triple word score, by the way, on that. And it's interesting how the essay projects a meaning into The Witness and then attacks it for failing to achieve the meaning in which I think the essay might have projected a little bit into it. Another interesting discussion that features Austin Walker and other members of the press, I'll link to, is a spoiler cast discussion of elements of The Witness, and they even comment quite often through there how they're very focused on talking about the narrative, even though it is not the majority of the gameplay and the majority of the time that the player spends in The Witness. It may be that there is no narrative through thread in The Witness. I'll finally link here a Giant Bomb interview with Jonathan Blow, in which he talks a lot about pulling meaning out of the game as it went on through development, and what it started out to mean. As it went over time, he decided it wasn't going to mean that, and he pulled out connected pieces, and you may just simply be grasping at the remnants of a story that is no longer present in the game, and you might be able to sum up narrative elements in The Witness as some text and movies that Jonathan Blow has seen or read, and he would really like just to share with you, and that's why they exist in the game. The gameplay doesn't focus on the narrative that much, and if Jonathan Blow has even talked about pulling it out and there may not be a connecting thread, why are we obsessed with finding one? What, as players, is making us say, no, we need an answer here? Is it just simply that players need an answer, that we can't handle a non-clean non-answered open book ending story or gameplay? I don't think so. I think there might actually be some things in The Witness that are counter to the design of the narrative. So let's go back over the gameplay a little bit. You start out and you're unlocking some puzzles, but eventually at some point the puzzles unlock a laser. And that laser goes to a mountain, and then you realize there are more lasers to unlock. This is very much through gameplay setting up that there is a deeper meaning here, or there's a deeper purpose to accomplish, because you can see there are a certain number of these lasers. You can sort of see that there's at least 7 that you need to get from counting latches, but 11 in total that you can find, and that this number, once achieved, is going to unlock something else. So it's not entirely crazy to think that once I have unlocked these 7 lasers, something more is going to reveal itself. There's also hidden objects in the land. I remember very clearly finding my first one, which was a rope on the ship. I sort of missed the obvious one of the waterfall by the mountain, but I did find a rope on the ship that unlocked that things on the island itself, outside of the puzzle screen, are bits of a puzzle. The island itself is a puzzle, and that sort of revelation also leads one to think, well, if the island is itself a puzzle, what am I solving? What is going to be unlocked? What gate is going to open? What reward will there be if I complete the puzzle that is the island, not necessarily the puzzles that are just on the island? And then there's a bit of some rewards in the game. So you solve some puzzles, and you solve some side quest puzzles, I'll say. They're not directly on the main path, and you get some actual video in the game, and this is the secret ending as well, as sort of a reward for solving that puzzle. And at this point, when you get a narrative reward for doing something in game, that is, in the language of traditional games, the narrative of the game. That is not a far-flung ideal to reach for or grasp from. It's pretty much how games have operated. And putting that element in the game, that you get a narrative reward chunk for solving some of the gameplay puzzles, does hint to the expectation from every other game that there's going to be a grander puzzle here. And of course, it doesn't mean there has to be. It's just that that is a player expectation built upon existing games, and if you put that in your game, and Jonathan Blow puts this into The Witness, you're going to have to deal with that expectation, because I don't approach The Witness as a clean blank slate. I approach it with the language of all games I have played prior, and I bring that with me when I play the game. Now let's talk a little bit about the statues in the game. Now, the statues may be there just simply because they play with perspective, and if you look at the statues at interesting angles, you see an interesting little portrait. Maybe one of my favorite ones is out on the mountain. There's a woman, much like a ship's mast, reaching up into the sky, and then down below you can find another woman that at the right angle looks like they're reaching to each other, and creates a nice little interesting thing that doesn't do anything other than have a nice little scene painted for you if you look at it at the right angle. This could be trying to teach me that some of the puzzles and the island itself is based upon perspective and how you look at it, and some of the answers will be trying to get in the right position and look at it, and that is definitely reflected a lot in the gameplay. However, they're statues of humans. So when you see facial expressions, you can't help but personify that statue. Even though it's not moving, it's lifeless, and it's cold stone, it's still reflective of emotion. It still has a human connection with you because it is a human face. And then these statues in The Witness are placed in such a way to have very dramatic poses, which just beg the question, what happened when that person was turned to a statue? Or if it was an artist creating the statue, what emotions and reasons for creating that statue that way were they trying to do? And the fact that there's a perspective hidden meaning sort of does imply that there is a meaning here, because if I look at it this way, I get more information about this person, the statue as a person, than I would otherwise. So this sort of sets up that there's a deeper narrative happening, even if I'm not seeing it on the surface. And last, one of the things I want to talk about is Jonathan Blow himself. He is known for going out and saying some very grandiose things. I look at him much the same way I look at Peter Molyneux, although let's say he's got a better track record. He promises or speaks of games in a very lofty format, in a very art format. He talks about creating true games or real games. He looks at a game and asks what the truth is, what the meaning is, and I genuinely like that discussion. I like that conversation. I like that he thinks that way. I want someone to push that edge of that envelope and question and look at our art through different lenses. However, know that, again, I don't approach a game in a cold, sterile environment. I know that Jonathan Blow made this game. I know he thinks and talks that way. So if he's gone out and talked about true meaning of a game, if he's gone and talked about a game that is for players who have read Gravity's Rainbow, for example, that's something he's actually said, then I'm going to expect Gravity's Rainbow level of deeper meaning in there, and I'm going to look for it, even if the comment may not have been particularly about the witness. Maybe it was something else in his head at that moment. It's going to come back to him. And the other part of this is the gameplay. Who is the villain? Who is the antagonist? Who are we up against? Well, in one sense, it's the island, right? It's the island and the puzzles on the island. But there's no face to the island. The island is just an island. The puzzles are just puzzles. They're just there. So there's a very human emotion and reaction of looking at these puzzles and saying, Jonathan Blow designed this puzzle. And as you play the game, and I am definitely guilty of this, especially in the puzzles that required audio cues to understand, I have tinnitus, so audio cues and picking out pitches is a problem for me. Much like somebody who is colorblind would have areas in the game that they would have problems picking out some of the colors chosen. That my complaints weren't the game is being mean, the puzzles are unfair, I hate this. I actually screamed out Jonathan Blow's name as, "You bastard Jonathan Blow, how dare you not give me something that can overcome my handicap? This is poor game design, Jonathan." And I personified Jonathan as the puzzle master in the game, sitting in his laboratory, evilly laughing as he constructed new diabolical traps for me to get through. Is that right? Is that fair? Well, probably some yes and some no, but it's there. And because of the things he has said, I'm going to personify me versus Jonathan Blow in the game, because that is the way the gameplay sets up, because there isn't something there that I feel like I'm fighting, so I have to provide my own answer. So, in a closing here, I just want to say that overall I think The Witness is an excellent game. I think the puzzles and the language they develop are well worth study and going back. I think the fact there's no tutorial explicitly ever in the game to tell you how to do anything once you step outside the cave and you get a few on-screen prompts just to let you know how you move and click and interact with things. That everything you do in The Witness is taught in the game of The Witness itself. And I think that is definitely worthy of study. I also think it's definitely worthy of study of how well the puzzles themselves evolve over time, and you learn a very complex language by the end. I think the puzzles that may particularly fail or frustrate are worth study as to why they may fail or frustrate a majority of players, and did they actually violate things in the language, or was that a fair frustration in, say, something like a Dark Souls player might say that, hey, this is a fair level of difficulty, the game is not unfair, there were clues, I just didn't know how to look for them yet, and so it was actually my fault, not the game's fault. But I do want to sort of caution developers when you're thinking about your game and your narrative, or building a game with a lack of narrative, that if that is your goal, if you are pulling out narrative, or if you're wanting something to not be spelled out or left open, that players are going to try to put something into it anyway, and that you need to be very, very careful in the game design to not enable too much of that, so that, like The Witness, the conversation isn't around your narrative that you didn't really mean to be the bulk of the game, instead of the bulk of the game. Many reviewers and critiques just focus around the ending of The Witness and gloss over the 40-50 hours it took to get there, which, to be honest, were a very enjoyable 40 to 50 hours, and it's kind of regretful I cannot replay The Witness because I now understand the language of the island, and I just won't have the aha moments of figuring out a new word vocabulary in the language of puzzles. I hope this video has been informative and giving you something to think about, and thank you for watching. I do intend to try to do a few more of these in the future, so if that happens, you may want to hit the subscribe button to know when that happens. Thank you for watching.